Exactly how it needs to be. Your method is terrible, and it's been my way.
Yeah,
Doesn't always work out very well.
well, that's part of the, if nobody has the same like either confidence or reasoning or evidence to back up their idea, I think that gives
I
you
guess
the
that's
the right the
yeah.
go ahead, right?
That's the kind of thing I think is. There's certain things that you're just like, yes, I've done this a bunch of times.
Yeah, and it's always frustrating trying to explain that. Like even if you just learned it through like years of like figuring it
Yeah.
out, you don't really know why you know it. It's just like you've done it so often, like you know this is the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel bad for like other team members or maybe junior engineers or something who are like, well, why? And you're like, well, fuck, I hated it when people told me
That's
like
the
just
hardest
because,
part.
but
Yeah.
that's what I want to say, you know?
It's definitely the hardest part of like, especially maybe pair coding with someone,
Oh, absolutely.
and you're going through and just sort of zoning. I'll build out a component and there's patterns that I use or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, why are you doing it that way? Well,
Well,
I don't really know. I know it works well. But,
yeah. So you want to get started on the topic or anything you want to talk about? Yeah. All right.
No,
Let me switch
let me
over to
pull
the.
this thing back up. I don't know why it keeps hiding it. So, there we go.
All right. So the title of the podcast is "Fuck Mondays," and that's a pretty stereotypical podcast name. But we'll go into why and how it relates to engineering specifically shortly. So, oh god, we don't have a sponsor message, so we can't do that part of the script.
No sponsors.
Oh shit, that's what I get for following a medium on how to write a podcast script. Let's get into context switching and what that is then to start off with, and how it relates to a terrible experience as on Mondays. So a context switch is when any employee, not just developers, but I think it's particularly prevalent in developers, is when they have to stop thinking about one vertical or idea or concept and start thinking about another one. And this usually happens when you like, I don't know, somebody comes up and taps your shoulder, right? And they're like, hey, did you get that memo? Or did you get that email? And you're like, okay, well, the last like 30 minutes of me trying to like trace through this issue are now useless.
Yeah, so I think with developer, I think it was an XKCD comic
Yeah.
that, as always, summed this up really well, which was like, I think you shared it to me actually initially, that one of like the, all the variables that you're storing in your head as a developer.
Oh, yeah, no.
Times.
Yeah, I
And you're
remember that
going
one.
through and you're like, okay, this is this, I need this minus this times this, or I need this variable at this index, whatever, all these different things.
Yep.
And then when somebody comes up and taps you on the shoulder, which is actually in recent times like part of the whole open office setting and all this other stuff, it's kind of that culture that they're trying to get to
Of
It
collaboration.
yeah, that kind of collaboration breaks developers flow in a way that's really detrimental.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And so hold on, let me go back to the script. So there's like a reason that it's costly, and not just because it hurts like developers like time and throws them off. But when you're switching problems specifically, like let's say you come to a developer with a problem that's urgent or quote unquote urgent, right? And you have to switch context specifically, not only from thinking of a different problem, but maybe in a totally different tech stack, or from back end to front end, or
Right.
maybe it's a business problem that's being had and not related to tech at all. But you have to change environments, and often involves like maybe opening a different IDE, changing the project, spinning up a new new Docker containers, all this stuff that takes time, like physical time, and then the time to mentally get in that headspace. Um, so this creates a lot of non-productive time compounding, right? So it's not just the one context switch, it's a lot of them. So now you have to switch into the new context, and then when that problem's done, switch to the old context, back to what you're doing. So if you say it takes 15 minutes to close your IDE, open up the new project, get in that headspace, that's half an hour of wasted time to switch contexts for whatever it is. And I think that's what makes it costly from like a business standpoint. If you want to try to get developers to have less and less unproductive time, then get rid of the context switches. I think is a large part of it.
Yeah, so exactly from a business perspective, you want developers' fingers on the keys as much as possible and solving logic issues as much as possible and not dealing with all that other stuff.
Yeah, and even if you do want them, I mean, there's always bugs, right? You're not going to get around that. That's not what like the context switching is about. It's about you want that time to be useful. If they're solving bugs, you want them to be solving that bug and not, setting up their IDE for the fourth time in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that leads us, I guess, to the question of what do we do about it?
Yeah. So I actually have that down somewhere. I have one more thing to note about how it compounds into itself before we get into how to solve it.
Okay.
So one of the things is, and how it relates to Mondays, is there are often a lot of new issues on Monday that, and I think this comes up later in the script too, but there's a lot of bugs happen over the weekend, or like users are using your platform, but customer support's not online to help them, so it all piles up on Monday, right?
Yep.
So if I know that those context switches are coming, that they're going to be there on Monday, and when I start my day on Monday as a developer, I'm not going to waste the time to get into a front end project, right? Because there's very likely a back end context switch on the horizon.
Right.
So I'll just wait for that back end switch to come, and often it does, and I'm still waiting 30 minutes for that to come, and if you go back to the original conversation, if it takes 15 or 30 minutes for a context switch, there's not a whole lot of difference in that wasted time between me context switching and me just waiting for the new project to happen, right? But on the days that it doesn't happen, I've sat there for like an hour and a half, just waiting for the stuff to roll in on Monday. So I think it's another large problem that's probably implicit and not really expected when you start to talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely, because that really only shows up after, a developer ends up seeing that, or anyone sees that pattern happening and it knows, okay, Monday it comes in, I'm not going to get any work done. And then that compounds on itself because you already have that mentality. So you're coming in, you're doing other stuff, catching up, and not necessarily in the mindset to focus on the workload because you're just waiting for those random Monday things to derail you anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And it's frustrating as a developer. Like, you don't want to work on this like Monday stuff. You don't want, usually don't want to be unproductive. Like, you like coding, like as a developer. I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's frustrating for everybody, the managers, business departments, the developer, everyone. So I guess now going into how to remedy it or fix it is to reduce external dependencies for context switching. So this can be done during any kind of planning meetings or anything. Make sure that you're not only delegating tasks and telling your developers what to do or see if there's any like technical blockers, but try to make sure everyone is aware of external dependencies. Maybe they need to talk to another department, or they need to, send out a patch notes update or something. Anything to prevent that shoulder tap, right, ahead of time.
Yeah. To prevent that shoulder tap, or even often, I would say, prevent the dev having to shoulder tap anybody, because that takes even more time.
Absolutely. And that's another context switch.
Yeah,
I agree.
because I'm going, okay, I have a mock-up of a form that needs to be built. I actually had this happen recently, and the form, it looks great,
Right.
but I'm in implementation mode,
Mm-hmm.
and then I get to it and I build it to the, exactly what the mock-up looks like. But the issue is, okay, well, some of these might need to be selectors. Well, what are all the options? Now I have to go, wait, ping somebody, wait for them to
Yeah.
reply, wait for them to ping someone else, especially, I mean, I work at a giant company, so it's like
It's just a
18
chain.
different hops.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that goes back to I lost my train of thought, but I did lose my train of thought. It goes back to like when you have to like that's another like not a context switch in the so far as you're waiting for somebody, but now the question is, do I wait for this person to get back to me, or do I spend the 30 minutes to start working on another project?
Exactly. And then you're switching, and then it comes back, and then, that thing might be higher priority, and then so you're switching again, and then all of a sudden your whole day is gone.
Absolutely. So yeah, certainly by getting rid of those external dependencies before they happen, um, you can prevent what could be several context switches back and forth between a few projects within the day, which is good. Um, so another thing is probably just like a more of a discipline or knowledge thing is coming to terms or facing or realizing that sometimes waiting for a response um, isn't necessarily wasted time. It is wasted time, the fact you're not being productive, but like we just said, if you switch context yet again into another project, instead of waiting 15 minutes to get back, you now have two context switches, which could take you 30 minutes. So waiting for somebody to get back to you for 15 minutes could be more beneficial than making sure your developers are always working on something or opening, PRs or committing code or something.
Right.
Because doing
Definitely.
so could actually make them more unproductive, not only in the long term but also in the short term. Oh, my computer died. Not died, but locked. So I think we kind of went over it a little bit, but we can also go over ad hoc development, and we talked about it quite a bit and how it relates to context switching. But I think it's kind of distinctly separate. Um, Not like the shoulder tap or having to switch context, but specifically the business part of maybe changing priorities or shifting priorities,
Right. Right.
often within the same day. Oh, this guy.
So what
Or
is ad hoc, just to get a good explanation of that? It is this sort of on the fly requirement changing, right?
yeah, either the scope of something changed or there's a new priority. Maybe you landed a new customer that was bigger than your other customers who like has different requirements that you're then shifting your roadmap to. All kinds of things that were not planned and either the sprint meeting or the quarterly planning or anything like that.
Right.
I hate
Yeah, which
these
happens very often,
more often than,
unfortunately.
yeah, when I got into the industry, I thought it would ever happen.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, obviously these people have like a really good plan. They'll always follow it. They're a real company, right?
Right.
Uh,
Right,
yeah,
but do kind of that illusion breaks fairly quickly.
absolutely.
And I can tell you, having worked at the smallest of small and now pretty large, it's the same regardless.
Yeah, and I think some places are better than others, but I think it's a condition of being a business, right? Especially with the new customer, new prospect angle.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to like read the script at the same time, but the level that I'm on now requires I like read hints and like go find things, and it's less of a platformer, and I kind of hate that. Um,
Yeah, I just got through this whole entire dungeon of like 50 scabs, and then I died. Went back to the beginning.
you have to get on that manual save so you can cheese them. Just like
Yeah, I feel
reload.
like that's cheating though, man.
In a lot of games it
I
is.
have a hard time with that because I'm like, I could save after every kill if I wanted to.
True.
But I like the challenge of like, can I get to a place where I feel like is a reasonable checkpoint and then save?
That's fair. That's
And then
fair.
I learn it, and by the last time I'm like a god at this dungeon. I know exactly where everybody's gonna be, how many there are. And even being able to repeat like that almost feels like cheating to me. Just coming from hardcore games that have permadeath and things.
Permadeath, yeah. I
It's
wonder if
like,
there's. I mean, that's why people make permadeath mods for a lot of games, right?
yeah,
Like people really
because you end
enjoy
up
that style of
feeling
gameplay.
cheap
Yeah.
of, oh man, I already came through here. Yeah, so I the weird thing was I didn't die to getting shot. There was like this thing I had never seen before. I was in this hallway and all of a sudden it like rips me out of my body and like my vision just zooms toward this black figure at the end of the hallway and he like punches me and then it happened again and I couldn't get out of it. It kept happening until I died. This game is wild.
That's kind of yeah, kind of weird for that kind of game.
Yeah, really. It was very strange, but hey, that's okay. It was pretty cool.
It's that emergent kind of gameplay is nice, I think. And maybe not emergent, but something you don't expect.
Yeah, I definitely did not expect it. Okay, I guess I should have gone this way. Might have been easier.
So, what this ad hoc work really is, the term that I think is popular now and that I like to use ever since reading the Phoenix Project, is it's unplanned work, right?
Yeah.
And the reason unplanned work is bad may not necessarily be that like it's the context switching alone, which makes your developers less productive, but also it becomes very difficult to plan deliverability.
Yeah.
Like from all levels, from me as a developer, if I don't know what level of, or what amount of unplanned work I'm going to get, I don't know how to tell you how long something's going to take in days. Like it could
Yeah,
take,
of course, exactly.
yeah, it could take 4 days of development time, but it could get me, or could take me, 2 weeks to actually get it to you, to get it finished out the door.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I
Um,
just died again. It's a really interesting thing because you end up saying that. I say that all the time, right? It's like, well, ideally this takes blank.
yeah, in an
And
ideal world.
you end up like doing estimations and all this other stuff based on this ideal because it's the only constant because everything else is constantly changing. But then
Mm-hmm.
it's not accurate. And so, something took 2 sprints or even took a whole, couldn't get to it till the end of the sprint, got pushed back, and then couldn't get it to it till the end of that sprint and got pushed back again
Yeah.
because we were, trying to work on this POC and getting it deployed and deploying it in production proved to be a bigger challenge. And that ended up taking everybody's hands, even though there wasn't like a story. Only one of us had a story for it.
Right.
So everything else that had gotten estimated based on this, our best guess was ended up being 2 weeks. Even though actually in Fingers on the Keys time dedicated to that thing, it probably took exactly how much we guessed it would. Which
Right.
is weird.
So the estimation was correct, but not the like deliverability,
Yeah.
like date, and that's frustrating for the developer because at least for me, it feels like I'm not getting things done on time that I said I would. But also for the business, they can't accurately plan for things like further out than in a few days. And that's not
Yeah.
any fault of the developer like not doing something. It's the fault of having unplanned work arise at various moments.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
And that can create a whole massive issues with, for lack of a better word, political relationships with product and
Even
other
with
stuff like
customers,
that,
you
or
have to
customers, which is even worse.
make that call and be like obviously as a business there are some customers who are more valuable than others. Either they're paying more or they're a more important logo to have or something, right? But when you have to actually come face to face and tell the customer like, hey, we didn't do what you wanted us to because another customer asked us for something else that we deemed higher priority, and we dropped literally everything we were working on. We can't deliver what we said we would, like tomorrow, like if the due date was like a recent thing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, it's tough.
it is. It's a hard problem, especially when, well, for a startup, I think, at least if you have that kind of every customer is the most important customer mentality, which I
Right.
may or may not be a valid mindset to have, but if you have limited money in the bank, I think it's the one that a lot of startups adopt. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Well, you're trying to scale, you're trying to get those business goals are priority for the company at that point.
yeah, and I think that's maybe a different problem to solve, um, and probably one I don't have a whole lot of insight into, at
Yeah,
least.
me neither.
But but I think even when, oh wait, where's this? I'm so close to finding this gem. Oh, there it
Oh
is.
my god.
Are you getting swarmed?
These scavs are tough, man.
I believe it. They have aimbot.
Especially with this 5.56 ammo. So apparently in this game the difficulty levels determine like the accuracy of the enemies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the second highest. So they're pretty dang accurate. I could
Yeah,
just tank them and turn on those belt things that I had, but it feels like cheating.
I mean, if it's in the game, maybe that's how they intend you to play it. Because I don't really like the concept of turning up enemy like accuracy or health or damage when you turn up difficulty. Like it feels cheap from the game's end. Oh
Yeah.
shit. But like you can turn it up a little bit. Like obviously, like better Call of Duty players are more accurate with their shots, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I think makes really good players is their ability to outplay you with map knowledge and flanking and tactics and things like that.
Yeah, totally.
But for a game that was old as Stalker, it's hard to program all that in at the state of game development it was in at that time. So I get it.
Oh my god. I keep forgetting I saved in freaking single fire.
Oh, you have to switch back every time? Now you have to switch back. And remember, like right now, save once you switch back to full auto. Or else you're going to forget again. It's going to get you killed. So I have a couple things on how to remedy ad hoc work from maybe a product standpoint. If the problem isn't that your company has shifting priorities from a business level, I think there are a few ways to remedy it still. So the first one is probably self-explanatory, but maybe difficult to implement or difficult to come to terms with needing to implement, is making unplanned work planned work. And
Okay. Yeah, that off the top of my head sounds very hard.
yeah, well, so you don't know what you don't know, right? But if you have enough data, this is, I think, the main benefit of Jira to me. It's not keeping track of your developers or keeping tabs on what they're doing and making sure they're doing this and this and this and where it's at. I think it's the ability to kind of data mine where your time is spent, or where your developers' time is spent. So if you have, if you tag all your stories with like, oh, this was an unplanned work, or this was a customer service request, or a shifting company priority request or something, and you look at that visualization at the end of the sprint or the end of the quarter or year or whatever time frame you're working on, you can see where your time is being spent. And if you know over the course of a year that 40% of your work is unplanned, before you even start on reducing unplanned work, you can increase your deliverability estimates by saying, hey, 40% of our sprint or our quarter is going to be unplanned work. We should plan for it now, instead of pretending like everything's going to be fine. Or everything's going to be planned. I mean, things can be fine and unplanned, but just having that I don't know, the note at the beginning of the sprint, like 40% is going to be unplanned, so we can't actually take on, 50 story points or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. Adjusting your estimates, adjusting the expectation,
Mm-hmm.
and being more realistic about it. That's definitely huge.
I think it's hard to come to terms with because if you have 4 developers and you estimate every developer can do, 50 points of work or 50 story
Right.
points of work or whatever, and then you do this analysis, it's hard to tell leadership like, oh well, now our 4 developers they're really only doing like, 25 story points of work each once we take into account unplanned work. But once that
Yeah.
happens, you'll see deliverability estimates be more accurate, so you can plan for it at least.
Yeah, it's hard in those conversations. You run in a lot to um other stakeholders, maybe product, maybe, depending on the size of the company, you might even be in a meeting with the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you run into them, or how do you manage that not looking like a performance and the promise that, our performance will be, what you're expecting it to be, because what people are expecting is, if we have 50 points of availability, that's bandwidth. We need to be using it. That's the thing that'll help us get it out the fastest versus, stepping back, being more realistic. Sometimes you end up finding that people don't exactly get that. And I don't know if
Yeah.
there's a solution, but
So I think by making unplanned work planned work, it's not like on the sprint you still see 50 story points done. Just 25 of it is allocated towards either new features or I don't know, customer requests or things that were planned and expected for whatever the company's goals are. And it's still work being
right,
done. And then during that discussion, go back to whatever heuristics your company uses to determine success and say, yeah, we only got, 25 points of this new feature done, but one of our, you know, data points for success is customer retention. And by doing this unplanned work and shifting priorities for certain customers, we were able to, improve
right,
customer
right,
retention
right,
as
right.
well.
So by bringing it to light and being realistic about it, you actually change the perception of those numbers anyway to be
Yeah.
more realistic as well.
And
To say that, you
yeah.
know, we're planning on shipping 2.0, for example, common phase for a startup to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And, at that point, a lot of stress is on, okay, are we getting this work done? Is it the deliver date for 2.0 or for things leading up to 2.0? Is it going to be hit?
Mm-hmm.
But depending on the size of your team, and often with small teams, it's not realistic to just forget about, like, you can't just forget about existing customers or 1.5 customers,
Yeah. Absolutely.
even though everybody wants to pretend like that's the way we're supposed to work. And so I think you're right by bringing that to light, bringing all that stuff up and saying, we're not going to fill the sprint with 2.0 work because we know we're going to have 1.5 work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at
Absolutely.
that point, the business people end up being more okay with that because they're going, okay, yeah, that is realistic.
Mm-hmm. And it allows those people to make better decisions. If you were banking, all this new revenue growth on 2.0, and
Right.
you got an estimate that was, you know, 4 months to deliver 2.0, and so the CEO and everybody can make decisions. Say, hey, in 4 months we're going to have this revenue explosion, and we can begin to plan our business strategy around that. And you can sell it if that 4 months estimate is incorrect. Then all the decisions you made counting on revenue 4 months in are going to look like bad decisions in retrospect and may not be what you expected. So even if it takes 6 months, being able to shift your business strategy for those more accurate estimations is probably better.
Yeah, definitely better, I would say.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if I was in that decision or in that position to make the decisions of, do I spend 100,000 now to get 400,000 later, and then I ended up spending 100,000 and the 400,000 never came, it's obviously a bad investment. So
Exactly.
yeah. And then so that was longer than I thought we'd go on that point, but I love it.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Um,
I think it's one of the reasons I was thinking about doing this kind of hangout podcast, whatever, morning show thing, was because I do like talking about these subjects.
yeah, and I
And,
think no, go ahead.
well, it's just a cool way to do it, you know?
Yeah,
Have,
it's loose, and I feel it's like providing a little structure gets it out of that rant status, maybe that like
yeah,
it's slightly more structured than having a beer after work, right?
right,
But it's less structured than coming up with a slideshow and presenting it to like the board.
right, totally.
Oh, don't. There we go.
But,
Yeah,
you
go
know,
ahead.
all of us in our career, it's beneficial, I think. It's cool to talk about it. You know, we have our peers and we play lots of games together, but it's also cool to like share this kind of stuff, these experiences.
Yeah, definitely. Because like you never know if it's issues just you're seeing, and you don't want to make recommendations based on your like anecdotal experience, right?
Yeah,
So it's good to verify and validate that with, like you said, our peers, or
yeah,
maybe
that's the tough part.
realize what we're experiencing isn't normal, and there's other ways to change it or remedy that for sure.
Or GTFO.
Or GTFO. It depends. But even
Yeah,
like
it definitely depends.
knowing what
This
not
is
to
where I
do
should
is
say
good,
that.
even if you do move like roles or positions or companies or whatever.
Yeah,
Still having that
absolutely.
knowledge is good. So I think, oh god, here we go. Another thing to note with ad hoc work is developers often don't have the insight to know whether or not they should prioritize something from another department, especially when a request is given to them by somebody who quote unquote outranks them in another department.
Definitely.
Because
This
I
is
mean,
where some process stuff comes into play.
definitely, and I think we've all had that, right? Where like, oh hey, the CMO, like the chief marketing officer, is like, I need you to do this, and you're like, well, my boss told me not to do anything for you, and he's like, well, I'm the CMO. It's like, okay.
Right. Right. And often like that situation in a startup, that person outranks even your boss.
Yeah, very likely. And it's the job of your boss, whether he's the director of engineering or a team lead or, whoever, to take that heat for you and prioritize things so that way there's not unplanned work.
Yeah.
And it's tough to make those calls, especially if you're in a position where you don't feel you have job security to kind of speak up. But I think in places that you are, like even if it's not somebody who outranks me, if it's like a customer success person or whoever that's like, hey, this customer needs this done, and I'm not sure how important that customer is to the company or what our business strategy is. Like as a developer, I can't make the call to prioritize that without having an external dependency on someone
Yeah.
higher up.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think to remedy that, having a clear company vision or company data points or heuristics for success can remedy that, because as a developer I can be like, okay, this customer needs this, but I know like a qualifier for success for this company is that 2.0 is launched and we're able to access this new vertical of customers, and I know from like strong leadership that this priority is more important than customer retention or whatever it is, so I can make that call without having to quit what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and maybe I make the wrong call, but at least the developers are empowered enough to be able to kind of prioritize things themselves, because that's going to happen no matter what. Because I've had days before where my boss or some other external dependency is either in meetings or on vacation or something, and what do I do in that situation? Bloop.
Yeah, that's definitely tough. And I think, oh, here it is. Got it. Got the flash drive.
I'm quitting this level. I hate it. I'm just gonna go play City Escape for the 10,000th time.
What do I do now? Find a way out of the underground. Well, I know a way out. It's the way I came in.
Oh, I don't have the thing to find the lost Chow.
Unless those soldiers are still up there. It was funny, there was a helicopter flying around and I kept shooting at it.
Yeah.
And you could hear them like jumping on the radio every time.
To like
chattering.
tell somebody about it?
Yeah, but nothing happened.
That's
They were
cool
just,
though.
like, chattering about it every time.
Yeah. I actually really enjoyed that though, even if something doesn't happen. I think specifically if something doesn't happen, just having that level of ambiance, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like atmosphere. It feels good.
No, this game is crazy though. Like, I cleared a checkpoint of military, like a military checkpoint,
Yeah.
and it was because they were extorting me. They were like, if you want to pass, you have to pay 500 rubles, and I had already done that. I was like, you know what, screw you guys, and I killed them all.
Oh, shit.
And then I thought I was done. I was like looting them and everything, and then like these two like kitted like chonky armor guys show up
Right.
as reinforcements and just like messed me up.
They just mow you down.
Yeah, they just absorbed all my shots. And
All that for 500
killed me.
rubles, man. You could have just paid the toll.
I didn't have that though because I already
Oh.
paid it. I paid it once and I thought I was gonna get for life, but no, these sketchy soldiers.
As every time, man. It's a toll. Yeah, you go on the toll road. I guess we have lifetime passes now. Doesn't matter. Never mind.
Yeah, I
The
went
analogy's
back
out
and
of date.
forth a couple times, but then once I like left the area and then came back, they were like, no. But now I can pass freely.
Perfect.
How do I get back up there?
So we talked about like process and how to eliminate some of that stuff. And I think there's a lot of like project management process out there already, so I don't want to get into that too much. Like, you know, you should have a ticket system or some kind of way for other departments
Right.
to communicate to developers. I think that's fairly well covered. But what we've done, and I think was successful, and Tanner in the chat, if he's still in there, is probably rolling his eyes because it was my idea, and I'm tooting my own horn here.
I think it was successful. I don't know about anybody else.
I don't know about anybody else at the company, but flipped into and created a hella big accent. I'm gonna tell him. Oh, so I'm just reading chat. Anyways, the idea that we had, that's like a bad thing about podcasts, and like there's so much going on in the script and the chat and whatever. But one of the things that we implemented at my current job is the idea of what I call the ticket czar, and I can feel Tanner's eyes roll right now. But the idea of a ticket czar is like a designated person to kind of intercept unplanned work,
Yeah.
and this is a rotating person. It's not like you hire somebody for this job, because that would be kind of unfair. Oh, I forgot I don't have the thing.
Is this somebody that, you know, devs say, hey, you need to talk to this person, or do you get an agreement from stakeholders that that person is the one that will get their work done? How do
It's
you
a little bit
how
of
do you get
both.
that? Okay.
So, if as a developer, so we have like a Slack channel for support requests, and like this Slack channel has been abused for like any requests that anybody has about anything requiring the engineering team.
Of course.
So, usually whoever's like online at the time previously would like go in and you know, investigate the problem and maybe solve it or whatever. They would be in that channel, and what ended up happening is every developer was glued to this channel, and even though like, oh crap, I died. No, I didn't. Even though a problem may already be like being worked on, or this has been discussed before, you still had, you know, all 6-7 developers looking at the channel every time a notification popped up, which again is like going back to context switching is a context switch sometimes. So instead, this one person that rotates every sprint would be the only one who looks at that channel and say, hey, even if like
Oh,
we
okay.
need another developer to do something, this person, the ticket czar, will tell you like, don't look at
Right.
the support channel, don't try to solve requests until the ticket czar tells you to. So he acts as the czar acts as like a support ticket person who works on support tickets for the majority of the sprint. Like that's the planned unplanned work. Also, like you designate like if a developer can do 50 story points, this like 40 of this developer's story points are reserved for incoming requests. And then additionally, the ticket czar handles delegation for things either the ticket czar can't do or is unaware of, maybe some module he's never worked on.
Right.
But they'll do the delegation for that as well, so that way you don't have to communicate with support or communicate with customers or anything else that requires a lot of time taken out of your day, you know?
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And I think it's working pretty well. I was only been the ticket czar once because I started it and thought it would be weird if I started it and like told somebody else they had to work on tickets all day. And so it hasn't come back to me yet. So it's only been 6 sprints maybe since we've had it. I think it's working pretty well.
Okay.
Some
Yeah,
developers don't like still look at the channel, so I think it's like eventually you'll have to train them to not look at support requests, but it's not too bad.
so I can see that working really well, especially in the current time, like where everybody's remote and oh my god, sorry.
No problem.
I have 3 bullets left. I'm gonna have to use this piece
Hey,
of crap 9mm that I have 2,000 bullets for.
you better aim for the head then.
Ah! Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh shit!
Oh my god, he's gonna kill me.
Is it like a boss creature or something?
No, it's just a freaking scav, man.
The
Okay,
super
I got him.
scav.
I have this silenced pistol that's just a piece of trash that I have 2,000 bullets for.
Well, you have like the benefit of numbers, man. Just unload into each one.
That's what I'm saying, Diggs. Diggs is in the chat. The guy's torso, who knows, man? I don't know. These guys just absorb bullets.
They have the Gen 4 armor.
Yeah, they got crazy kitted armor. Who knows? Anyway, back to it. What I was saying was, I think it'd work really well, given that the Slack channel is the only way to get that communication across. How do you see it changing, if at all, when you go back to an in-office environment?
Like the physical shoulder tap.
Yeah, because that happens.
Ooh.
I mean, so at the last company I worked at, not gonna name names here. It was very, very often. Diggs can attest to this, that we had one, developer who'd been there for a while, who
Yep.
was the guy who pretty much knew the stack,
Yeah.
and ended up spending almost all of his sprint time fulfilling requests because
Right.
people would just go directly to him and they would skip over what we had as the tickets are at the time, which was our product person,
Right.
like our PM, right?
Yeah. So I think a PM acts as a good like delegation part of the ticket czar for sure. It fills that role. So they
And
went to this
we
developer anyway.
we definitely had to work hard. I think in this case it was just a matter of really going and changing a pattern that had existed. Oh man, this is the scary part, dude. This is where that freaking creature grabbed me and wouldn't let me go.
The invisible one.
Oh, I killed the invisible one just now, actually. This one
good,
is
good.
the black figure at the end of the hallway.
The black figure. Just an
I-
unknown
honestly,
blob.
It's terrifying. We're gonna save right here because it's about to happen. Watch this, Diggs. As soon as I go in this hallway. Watch. Just wait. Wait for it. There he is. Oh my god. What is going on? What the fuck? What was that? So he comes in behind me, so I just have to sprint.
Right.
See, this is the kind of stuff I'm imagining, you know, when they talk about the cultists in Tarkov.
That's you're probably right. How
I
like
told you I
inspired
wasn't
Tarkov was by
kidding,
Nikita.
Diggs.
Yeah.
I told you I wasn't kidding.
Wait, not being forced.
This guy, I know, he just zooms me in. Like, the effect is so interesting too, because it really grabs me and just like pulls my vision towards him, and then does this like I don't know, like he's airbending me. That's the best way I can describe the effect.
Shit.
But I swear, man, I swear, we're never gonna get a confirmation of this, because it's just not something that anybody would ever talk about. But I guarantee you, Nikita just played through this whole series and was like, yeah, I'm gonna take this whole game and make another game out of it. Oh my god.
But just multiplayer
Run.
PvP.
Yeah.
It looks way too inspired. Like the art direction alone, like I don't know.
Oh my
Very
god.
similar.
This is insane. I really want to kill this guy, but I don't think I can.
Aim for the head. Should be fine. Easy peasy.
I'm getting like huge fluctuations in radiation around here. Oh, he can see me. He can squeeze me. Oh, and he brought... Was that him? That was him. I got him.
Yeah.
I cheesed him through a little crack. Who dat?
Do you guys swarm, pair, or other ways of ensuring developer success on a team? Personally, we don't. So I think I can talk about like team composition and what I think ideal team composition is. And
Okay.
I think pair programming is incredibly beneficial, especially when if you have two developers you want to work on a smaller project. I think if you want to work on like your project is to create an endpoint that does like that gets an aggregate of all sales or something and returns sales by customer vertical or whatever, something targeted and probably contained to a few hundred lines of code. I think pair programming is very useful, and especially pairing, I think, mid-levels and juniors together. I think the level of knowledge you gain from watching somebody experiencing the system code is a little unprecedented. As far as I don't think there's anything else you can do, like reading documentation, assigning them stories, watching videos, like nothing else you can do besides pair programming that really gets them the knowledge they need for a junior developer at least.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then
Oh god.
I think team composition wise, for like in general, I think two developers or two individuals, developers, designers, whatever, like a pair of people are super efficient. And even if they're not working on the same thing or doing the same kind of work or pair programming or whatever, as long as they're working on the same project or problem statement, I think 2 is the magic number. I think more than that, you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen kind of problems. Oh shit.
Okay.
Where it's like, and
I
I don't mean like
definitely-
2 on like a team. I mean 2 on like a singular project.
Yeah, the cooks in the kitchen thing can happen really fast and can get hard to control. We have that issue. We have like a 30-person team. And anytime someone says, hey, let's connect in a public channel and post a link to WebEx,
Yeah.
then we get like this influx of, everybody's just joining, they want to be involved.
Yeah,
But
which I mean
then
is great,
sometimes,
but
sometimes you'll get, just people listening in. Like I'll join calls just to listen most of the time. And then if I have something to say, I can chime in, but I kind of just let, I want to learn because there's a lot of stuff going on
right.
about, the platform. And it's like that video that you guys, it's like that video that you posted about all the different services and everything. So there's a lot of stuff to learn still, but um
Yeah, and it's not
losing my train of thought, sorry.
no, but I think what you're getting at is like the cooks in the kitchen thing happens, and you still want everybody to be able to kind of be involved
Yeah.
and read and listen in, and that's fine. It's not a replacement for teams. Like you can still have a development
Yeah.
team of 10, 20, 30 people, 100 engineers, doesn't matter. But when you're working on a single project, and I have a question about, let's say, like naming conventions for the sake of something like very subjective, right? And you get two people talking about naming conventions, and you can have two very conflicting viewpoints, but I think you can have at least a compromise come out of that, right? I think when you get four people
Yeah.
talking about naming conventions,
Yeah, it
it's
gets
endless.
tricky.
And
Sasquatch is in the chat, says that it's definitely approaching the problem in the context of team size
mm-hmm.
changes things, because if you only got a couple team members, then it's easy to keep everybody engaged and involved.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah, I think when you have, like you said, the team of 30, like an actual team on the same in the same department, in the same, you know, module or component of the business, it's hard to get everybody involved, like everybody. And that's probably something I don't have a ton of insight into. But
Yeah.
I don't think you can work 30 people on a single project, no matter what. Depending on the size of the project, but I think at the point in time where your project takes 30 people to work on, it needs to be split up into smaller projects.
Yeah, definitely.
Or teams or whatever. Like, if I had a larger team like that, and it was a whole project, like let's say payment processing 2.0 at Amex or something, right?
Yeah.
Which is a big deal for Amex. It would take a lot of engineers. I wouldn't put, more than two people probably on the same set of controllers, or the same models, or creating like if there's a service like a job service to take queued up or failed payments and process them at a later date. If that was a whole service, I wouldn't put 30 people on that. Like, I wouldn't have all 30 working on it.
Yeah, exactly. Sasquatch just said, imagine sending an entire garage of mechanics in to change an oil.
Yeah,
It doesn't
absolutely.
make sense. It just
No,
doesn't.
not at all. Yeah, so I like that analogy a lot, actually. I'll probably steal that one.
Oh my god. I popped up from underground inside the military base.
Oh, that's good, man. You're going Splinter Cell style.
They're all shooting at me. There's no
Oh,
Splinter
never
Cell
mind.
here.
Right. So, in like a final answer to Diggs's question, I think two
Did
people.
he come? Sorry, keep going.
Oh, so like two, I think, is the ideal, in my opinion, for any sizable chunk of work that could be accomplished by two people. Which is like a roundabout way of saying, if it takes more than two people, I would split up the chunks of work until it was accomplishable by two people, and then that would be my ideal team size. And looping everybody in after the fact can be done through what I describe as roundtables, and that's a moment for everybody involved in the project, the project owners, the stakeholders, the people working on it, to kind of come to terms or ask questions or whatever it may be, whatever input or discussion
Yeah.
needs to be had, and it needs to happen. And at 30 people, you probably, or 30 or 40 or 50, you probably have some kind of hierarchy to delegate who's in these meetings.
Definitely.
And it doesn't have to be everybody, but I think at least one of each of the two people need to be in it. And if you have a project that's thousands of engineers like Microsoft, I think you'll have multiple roundtables that kind of step up in like a tree-like fashion.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, you probably won't have one of the developers talking with the CEO at like Microsoft's level, right? But you would have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 senior architects or principal architects and team leads. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It seems like a natural way to manage that chaos.
Yeah, and I'm obviously not qualified to talk about it at the 1,000 like engineer level, right? I wish I was, but it's probably a little bit beyond what I know. But I think at like the 10, 20, 30 level, you can still split up most tasks and most projects into 2 people. I've broken this one.
Yeah.
Is that red tape? Yeah, I think it is red tape, Diggs. Like at the 1,000 engineer level, where you have where a singular engineer doesn't have access to the CEO. I think that's very apparently red tape. And I'm not quite sure how to solve it, at least off the top of my head, without some research. Because as you know, even as a principal architect for somebody that has over thousands of engineers, it's hard to think about all of the issues each one of those engineers could be having as a single person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think it's about like hierarchy at that point. It's just bandwidth for any individual. Like,
yeah,
nobody.
Yeah. It's probably a different discussion, but I think that's where culture of hierarchy becomes a thing. Maybe we can do.
Oh, I'd
talk
like
about
that.
that a little bit.
Yeah.
At some point, but because I had a tiny bit of experience in an experiment around that hierarchy stuff, and I learned a ton about what is hierarchy in general, what does it mean, what is it supposed to do, what is it not supposed to do, all this other kind of stuff, just through going through this experience. And I think that is the second piece of what you're talking about. So it is red tape, and it sounds bad, but it's all about how you manage it and handle it and what that means within the company. If it's climb the ladder, you're a scrub because you're at the bottom, that's one thing. Or if it's really focused on providing the benefit that it's supposed to provide and not just arbitrarily, then it becomes a different thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was because everybody kind of hates like being like, oh, you can't like I don't have any input, right?
Yeah,
But
you by the nature of the system design, you're excluded from these other meetings, and people hate that, and you're naturally going to hate that. But if the reason that becomes bad is when it is either there's not a clear path for involvement in higher things, or you're not fulfilling what people are there to do. And so, there's no shortage of projects.
Yeah.
When somebody wants to be involved and expresses that, there's ways to start fulfilling that and get them on that path, and that's where the culture of that hierarchy comes into play.
I agree, and that's a really good point. Is like you can't have everybody in every meeting, right? But at the same time, I don't want to be in every meeting. Like, not everything is interesting to me. But like the things that are, yeah, that's a good point. Like having a pathway for people to be included on the things they want to is really important. I like that.
Yeah, just an open, dialogue about that. And like Sasquatch said, it probably depends how you approach that. Depends on the size of company and team and everything. But
I agree. We should do a whole
exactly,
thing on that.
Sasquatch. I just saw your chat. hierarchy doesn't work if everyone is only trying to make themselves look good and not take responsibility as a leader. And
Ooh, that's
that's
really,
part of that
yeah.
culture thing. Is like, what is the point of the hierarchy? Is it because, is it a pissing contest and everybody just gets paid more and it looks cool?
Right.
Or is it because people are involved and engaged and want to grow up that because it's part of their career and not just because it's going to pay them more or something?
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think it's necessarily about like self starters or people who enjoy being task digs. It's like, I don't know, like some days I feel like I just want to go in and do my stories, and I think that's a very like valid way to approach the job. Like I don't think everybody has to be this entrepreneur who's going to be like whatever. Like you don't have to do that. I don't think it should be expected either. But I think even if I like enjoy having a structure to my day and a structure, um, to my tasks and things like that, I can still want to be involved in other projects. Like if I want to move
Mm-hmm.
horizontally or something, and like, oh hey, I see you guys are doing a new data analytics project. Can I shadow that meeting? Because I would like to learn about that and move my career in that direction. And I don't think that's even like horizontal like that. It's not about hierarchy. It's just about being involved in more things at the company.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Definitely.
so I'm
So,
actually gonna write that note down to do like a whole thing on this because I think it's really good,
yeah, I think it'd be
especially with
cool.
your experience, with your like hierarchy experiments and things like that.
Well, the cool part is about that is that I went into it with one mentality and came out of it with a different one. And so I literally learned enough, so much through that experience that it really changed the way I saw a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, which is I think phenomenal. Like, I don't think a lot of people have that experience. A lot of people go in and self validate their own things, right? And I think
Yeah.
that'd be super interesting insight of like going in it with one mindset and like experiencing something and then entirely changing your viewpoint on it.
Yeah, it was. Like, I mean, it's definitely in the trajectory of growth, like I don't disagree with my older self, but
Right.
I see that there were a lot of things that I didn't quite understand about that side of things, hierarchy in general, and what the
Mm-hmm.
purpose was. Um, but yeah, I think it'd be really cool subject to touch on.
I agree.
It's 10:50. I probably gotta um wrap this up actually because I have
Yeah.
to stand up at 11.
I only took off till 10:45, but I think I think we already got to the conclusion early on the thing, and the idea is when you have unplanned work, whether or not the company plans for it, developers will, and on Mondays they're going to sit there and wait for unplanned work,
Yep,
and
I think
it's
that's
yeah,
a
it's pretty much
really
what I
good
was going
thing to
for.
call out. Um, yeah, we talked about it a bit earlier, but
Yeah,
I
that's
think
all.
it
That's
makes
really all I wanted out of
sense,
it.
and it's why Mondays feel so mundane.
Yeah, it's
Is
both
because you're
overwhelming
not
and underwhelming.
exactly, and you're not doing much fulfilling work. You're
Yeah,
just waiting.
um, yeah,
You want to
absolutely.
get people excited about Mondays. I mean,
You have to reduce unplanned work and
yeah,
reduce external dependencies that demand context switching or constant context switching. I
yep.
think, and
Yeah,
then Monday should be better.
I think that makes a ton of sense, dude.
Yeah,
Well, I enjoyed this. We're gonna
me
have
too.
to
This
do it
was
again.
a good format. You still liking the format, the game and
Yeah.
talk kind of deal? Okay, we'll have to do it again. We'll
Oh
do
my god.
on another topic. Need a podcast on flexing,
How
like
did I
actual
not
flexing
die?
digs. I have a tank top in there.
This dude landed a nade at my feet and I didn't die.
Dang, dude, you got lucky. That RNG gods have blessed you. RNGesus.
For real.
I do have a neon colored tank. It's like neon salmon colored kind of. Digs.
Oh god, oh god, oh god.
Oh, entered apartment flexing. Or outside your wheelhouse. Yeah, I think we'll discuss that on hierarchies.
Yeah.
And like, for what I understand, are shadow hierarchies and how they kind of play into things.
Yep. That's a big part of that culture of hierarchy is what does it mean? Does experience, is experience used in the right way? Is it, how do you treat juniors? How do you treat seniors?
Yeah, absolutely.
What does the culture around that look like? And that's going to be a really interesting subject, I think.
I agree. I like that. All right, man.
Anyway,
we can call it. If I had my soundboard set up, this is where I would do the outro jingle.
yeah.
But I don't have it.
Do
so.
the Sequoia style.
Yeah.
I need that. I need
For
a
sure.
stream deck so I can cue the curtains.
Absolutely. Different domain mixing with experience of someone else. Yeah, Diggs, let's talk about that, like your question specifically, and we'll do the next one over it. That sounds fun. On hierarchy and shadow hierarchy and, things like that.
Yeah.
I'm down.
Yeah. Sounds good, guys.
All right, man.
Well,
take it easy.
Thanks for hanging.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, exactly, Sasquatch. Topic of hiring leaders from perspective of a new guy. What is that?
Of hiring leaders from, I like that a lot, actually.
That whole thing, there's so many pieces to touch on there. Like what leaders, Sasquatch made a good point of like, you get a bunch of the guy that we had a terrible experience with. If you hire people for domain knowledge and not leadership skills into leadership type areas, or even let them default into leadership type things without giving them that training.